right, guys, so welcome to our third workshop of the semester. This one is the technical interview prep workshop, and we're going to be going over pretty much the entire basis of what to expect when entering that specific round within any interview regarding a job in the technical field. So the information that we're going to provide today can pretty much be applied to most technical majors, whether you're computer science, computer engineering, IT, etc. So we're gonna cover the different technologies that'll be asked, ways to analyze your job post so you can know what methods that are the best to study for. And yeah, and we're gonna go into specifics about everything. And we have Jose Isiano, Sean, and Eric here. So we're going to break out into 4 breakout rooms, assign everybody a breakout room, and go through all the slides. So, and yeah, and before we begin, you are going to get a invitation to go into a breakout room. It's going to be either one of the 4 of us. And yeah, so the technical interview is just basically one that's given to go over not only behavioral aspects in an interview, but it'll relate to either the company's technologies that they use at the moment or just overall technologies in the field that relates to the position you're applying for. So these interviews look at the candidates through process problem solving and communication skills. So they not only want to see you solve the technical questions that they're asking you, they want to see your communication skills as well. So you're going to need to be able to not only provide your answer, but a thorough explanation of it, going step by step. You're going to want to describe the entire process before you begin to provide your solution. So if you don't have, all the syntax correct or the problem isn't in 100% perfect, at least the engineer or recruiter knows that you understand what you're doing and the process that you're taking to reach your conclusion. And of course, you're not going to want to toss out any of the behavioral skills that you did on the previous part of the interview. There are times where the recruiters do pay attention to technical skills as well as your behavioral skills, like I just mentioned. And yeah, so that is the overall basic gist of a technical interview. And we're going to go more in depth on the preparation when we go into the breakout rooms, but an overall basis of it is the just problem solving through LeetCode, HackerRank, Caddis, etc. Now, these sites have been the most frequently used for a reason. If you've been in a few technical interviews or know anybody that has, then you know from firsthand experience that majority of the questions and the material they use is very similar to these third-party websites. They tend to, of course, depending on the position you're applying for, will reflect on the difficulty level, but nonetheless, you can find similar problems to the ones you'll be asked on LeetCode and HackerRank. Of course, you need to be able to figure out what you're looking for in the first place, which is what we're going to discuss today. But when you do have a good understanding of the specific material you want to study for, then you can go to these sites and find questions pertaining to the material that you think you'll be asked. And yeah, they're amazing websites. And yeah, repetition, repetition, repetition. You're not only going to want to go over the problems you find once or twice. It's a brutal process, but the field that we're in, it's necessary. Um, no one necessarily likes going through hundreds or dozens, if not hundreds, of leak code questions, but you need to not only be able to visualize it when you're asked the question, but give a time efficient solution. So that only comes with repetition on these questions. So just expect to put in a little bit of time studying for these. And yeah, so mental preparation goes a long way. Of course, everyone's going to be a tad bit nervous going into these, but engineers, recruiters, managers are able to see through that. So if you can go in there with just with the easing of your anxiety, you just feel calm. It's not only going to help yourself, but recruiters and engineers will be able to tell, oh, he's clearly in a position where this is going to affect the rest of his life, and he's able to mentally handle it. So that'll honestly tell them that you can handle adverse situations and um, yeah, just deal with tough times mentally, and that'll help you out in the long run when applying to a company. And Glassdoor is a massive tool that everybody should be utilizing. Not only is Blind and LinkedIn good, but Glassdoor actually provides you with reviews from people that just came out of internships or full-time positions or are currently in either one of the two. And they'll go over the exact process. Sometimes they actually put down qu related questions that they were asked, and just by looking at that, you can kind of get like an overall basis if they will ask you, like, let's say data structure questions, and you'll like object oriented based, and you'll have a good kind of foundation on what to study for. But yeah, nonetheless, Glassdoor 9 out of 10 times will give you a great understanding of how the entire application process works at a company, um, COVID or not COVID. So just from start to finish, from submitting your application to receiving the offer letter and everything in between. And yeah, of course, you need to make sure you analyze the job post to know exactly the specific requirements they're looking for in a candidate. And that'll give you kind of a good idea on the technical questions they're going to ask. And we'll go in depth on that in a second. Right. And we are going to assign the breakout rooms. And once everybody receives an invitation, make sure to join. Right. And everybody. Okay, perfect.
Hello.
Right. Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
Good.
Perfect. Does anybody still have midterms left?
No, we're all done with our midterms.
Yeah, no, I had my last one on Sunday, so that was all right. Perfect. So we're gonna begin. And okay. So the first part is just analyzing the job post. You want to brush up on the fundamentals of the required languages. So for any position you are going to apply to, there will usually be a list of required languages that the company uses or they require you to know. If you're going for a software engineering position, more likely than not, object-oriented based programming languages will be the most common. Of course, there are some companies that primarily focus on Python or use C or anything like that in that nature, but that's a big thing. And if you're not very fluent in the required languages they're looking for, then it might not be in your best interest because they're going to go very specific on their questions about the language, and you need to demonstrate how you understand the fundamentals and how you can apply them to different questions that they might ask. So it's a lot of preparation, but that's what we're here for. And so just different system architecture factors are huge as well. More likely than not, every single job post on either LinkedIn, Handshake, Indeed, Jumpstart, all of these all of these job posts all have a few things in common. They always have the required languages and they always have system architecture factors. And each company tends to be slightly different. So you need to pay attention to those because if you can show that you understand those specific factors that they're looking for and demonstrate them in just different projects and whatnot, then that definitely goes a long way. And you'll be able to show that through the questions that they will be asking you. And right, hold on a second, guys. Okay, so and yeah, so and if you're not aware of the agile cycle, they will sometimes ask you about the agile cycle just to make sure that you understand that kind of process. During this time period, 9 out of 10 companies, they all use agile. Um, most companies use a different type of version of agile that kind of adheres to what they specifically want, but they all use agile and include code sprints in that cycle. So not all technical interviews will just be, okay, here's 3 questions on HackerRank or HireVue, and you have an hour and a half to finish them, So that's not the only technical questions that you can expect. Some companies ask you questions that might seem like behavioral questions, but they're very technical based. So they would ask you things like, um, just how would you approach a specific project within the third step of the agile cycle when XYZ is occurring, and you'd have to be able to answer that to show them that you'd be able to work in an environment with that cycle under extreme time constraints and budget constraints. So, and yeah, the company technology kind of relates back to what I was saying. The required programming languages they want you to know is more likely going to be the languages that the company uses itself. So understanding those automatically gives you a step up, because when you're within the company, you'll already understand the technology, um, the fundamentals of the technology. And yeah, you're going to want to be able to match your strengths to items for the job description and requirements. So when they are asking either live coding questions or coding questions through a third party, or having you debug or just ask or just answer basic programming questions, you're going to want to try your best to incorporate your different strengths for all of these skills with real life events. Um, Obviously, that doesn't apply to the live coding questions, but any other technical question, to show that they can see that you actually have experience with it. And yeah, so for languages, you're going to want to know the basic, you're going to want to know the basic language that they use, but they will allow you to use any language you want in the end of the day. I've seen a few companies that are very adamant on the language they want you to use, but most of the time they will give you just a list of different languages you can use. But at the same time, that is a bit of a test. They still want to see you demonstrate your skills in that required language that they're looking for. So even though they're letting you use just different languages like R, C, C sharp, C++, Java, Python, JavaScript, you're going to want to, in the end of the day, not only pick the one you're most comfortable with, but the one that's going to impress the company the most. It should be a given, but that's something they definitely look out for. And yeah, so whatever they have you write your code on, it might not be on the command line or a specific IDE that you are familiar with. It could tend to be like a Google Docs kind of deal where they already understand just by looking at your code how it would run without using a compiler. So you shouldn't worry as much about the syntax errors. Okay, you should more worry about if your solution will run, if you're disregarding the syntax errors, if your solution will run, and not only run but be very time efficient. Like let's say you you solve the problem, but it's within like a double nested for loop, and it's just a absolutely horrible just time efficiency. So even though you got the problem correct, they're still not going to like that. They want you to be able to write clean, efficient code. So, and yeah, as you're going through the process of answering these live coding questions with the recruiters, don't just sit there and just gun for it and write out the entire problem. You're going to want to, like I said before, you're going to want to describe your entire approach step by step, and don't be afraid to ask the engineer any questions. They are there to help. Some people tend to be afraid of that. They think that it might be a little intimidating asking them that you'd come across as just unknowledgeable of the topic, but no, usually the questions they ask tend to be sometimes a bit difficult. So you can ask the engineers of just different little specifics on the question, and that could help you out in the long run. So you start off by going through the whole approach that you want to take. Right as you're writing out the different lines of code, you're going to want to go through each step describing what you're doing, why you're doing it. So they not only know that you are able to solve the problem, but that you understand it and you're able to communicate it. Because with software and different software companies, you're not just going to write this one program and it's going to be done, forever. People are going to have to go back and critique it over time, either you or some other engineers, and everything is usually an infinite ongoing piece of work that can be altered. Technology is never complacent, so just high emphasis on communication when you're delivering these answers and just clean and efficient code. Those are the three things that'll get you straight through that live coding round. And hypothetically, even if you get it, you don't want to, but even if you end up getting the question wrong, or any one of however many questions they ask, if you end up getting one of them wrong, if you delivered it very precisely with your description, demonstrated your understanding, and knew that you could execute it, but you maybe stumbled upon one on one like line, you had a few errors, it'll still help you out in the end of the day if you can demonstrate those skills. And
I have a quick question.
yeah, go for it.
All right. For example, since there's a COVID thing, some of these things are like digital, like a test. Like you just take it, and then some of them I was scared because not to take them the test because they're saying, oh, after I read the details, they were saying that, oh, it doesn't matter if you do it right or correct. You just want to see how you think. How could they tell from a digital code? How?
Yeah, that's the thing. You're 100% correct, right? So there's still companies that still do the live coding round, like Facebook, for instance, and Lockheed Martin. They still do. Yeah, I'm pretty sure about Lockheed, but definitely Facebook, right? So they don't give you like how JP Morgan, Amazon, um, Robinhood, and some other companies will just send you a link in your email and give you like, oh, well, here's this, take this assessment on this third-party website. We're going to proctor it, and it's going to be 3 to 4 questions. They'll have you literally be in a Zoom meeting with 2 to 3 engineers on average. And, like I said, you're going to go through it, get on a Google Docs with them, everything's proctored, and you're going to have to describe what you're doing. Now, that's usually the case without COVID. That's how it's supposed to always go. But with COVID, majority of these applications, you will end up doing these programming questions online, and there really isn't a way to kind of do like what I said before, kind of demonstrate your understanding. When you do get one of those, links for a third-party coding assessment, there's only one thing that matters, and that's just getting the solution right in a time-efficient manner. Explaining the solution and how you got to it completely goes out the window at that point, right? Because you are proctored, but that's obviously to make sure you're not looking up answers. But yeah, so there's different scenarios that could happen depending on which company you apply to.
I think it's kind of hard to look for answers because I was taking an Amazon one.
Yeah.
They had the camera on looking at my my whole what's going on with my setup. I'm like, damn, I can't.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go for it, Mo.
Yeah, so actually, for the most part, you can look up basic like syntax. Like usually when you take a hacker rank, it even says you can look up references. So if it's something like an import, you actually can look up an import. You can't look up like actual code, but most times you can look up like an import, for example.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that. I didn't know that was scared, bro. I didn't know. I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I can't
Yeah,
teach.
yeah. No, you're good.
yeah, no, because I got a
Because if it was in person, you would just ask.
yeah, exactly. Um, either way, looking up full-blown answers, clearly, that's you can't do that anywhere. But yeah, that is nice. HackerRank, you can look up like the input and output, just examples. Yeah, you can honestly you can do that with most third-party websites now I think about it. Same with HireView with JP Morgan and Amazon, I'm not mistaken. But you still want to be prepared for any type of scenario that could happen. Of course, you're going before you apply to these companies, you'll go on Glassdoor and see their process at the moment on how they're going about hiring people for whatever position you're applying to. But it's always safe to just be prepared if it is going to be a live coding round with engineers, or it's going to be held through a website like HackerRank. So you just don't want to be taken by surprise, that's all. And and yeah, so you'll either get one of those two type of questions, those two type of approaches to answering coding questions. Of course, some companies might not even give you coding questions like that, physical coding questions. They might just ask you just basic um, technical question that shows your comprehension of programming in general, or regarding the um, related technologies, like the first bullet point where it says based on the language you choose, interviewers may ask questions about it. So there's been I was in an interview one time with a small startup, and they didn't give me a single coding question like most of the Fortune 500 companies do, like we all know at this point. But they just listed off question after question, just such as what makes object-oriented programming different from procedural or functional programming, just questions like that that showed your basic understanding of programming in general. And it nothing was very specific, but they would just ask what like if they were looking for Python or Java, they would just ask basic syntax questions. And there also occurs, like with Amazon, the first round, if I'm not mistaken, is debugging. So they'll give you a list of questions and you'll have to go through it and see what are the errors within the few lines that they provide you. Now, obviously, that's subjective. I personally would think that would be easier than the live coding rounds. Obviously, others could think differently, but there's multiple approaches in these technical interviews, right? They can just ask free base questions entirely, do a mix of those, do a live interview round, do the technical interview through a third party website. So most companies are different, so just make sure to prepare for those. And yeah, a massive part is understanding the runtimes of algorithms, right? Because majority of the time, some of these questions that they ask, a lot of us will be able to solve them. But what differentiates a good programmer from a bad programmer is efficiency, right? So they will be able to tell just by looking at your code if it is extremely costly or not, and if they can run the code and it'll just take forever to run compared to someone else's. So make sure when you practice questions on LeetCode or HackerRank or other websites to when you find out an answer to a question, just keep going at it until you can get the best or the most efficient time, the most efficient run time for it, because that's a golden ticket and into getting an offer letter. So, and yeah. So we got data structures, right? So if you are computer science, IT majors sometimes get a good amount of data structure questions. Majority of the time, it's going to be computer science students that'll get the bulk of them. Of course, web design as well. But there are majority of questions for software engineering related roles that are just swarmed by data structure questions. So it's an understatement to say this. You need to put the most effort and preparation regarding data structures and algorithms, because majority of the time it's going to be easy to medium level leak code questions that are based on data structures, right? So like stacks and queues, hash maps, hash sets, trees, arrays, array lists. So like what makes an array list different from a linked list, or how would you implement a stack or a queue? What is a DQ or what's an on queue? Give me two real life examples of stacks and queues, right? There was one time I was asked, how would you use stacks and queues in real life? And then just I think funny enough from like I think a programming too with Carol Ron, some maybe, where I for some reason vividly remembered where when papers are sent to a printer, it's automatically put on a stack, right? So it's first in, first out, or yeah, last in, first out. So FIFO or LIFO. So it's just the simple things like that. You need to go over. These are the most popular data structures right here that are the most commonly asked in technical interviews. And you're going to want to study those first, go over the understanding of it, right? And understand its purpose, why you would use it. And once you get a clear understanding of it, then you'll really understand how and when to apply it to a question and how that'll reflect your time complexity, right, of the problem. So here are just some simple questions. Just name common operations performed on data structures. How is an array different from a linked list? What data structures are used for breadth first and depth first search? And as you can see on the bottom, these are different runtimes, right? So constant clearly is very good. You have logarithmic, linear, and quadratic. And depending on the problem you get, you're going to want to stay within the first three. So, just logarithmic, linear, or constant. And so just have a clear understanding of that. Several websites online go very specific into analyzing your solutions to understand what is the runtimes of it. It can be a bit tedious at first, but this is applied in everything when you're coding from here and throughout your whole career. If you want to do programming as your career, everything relies on the runtime. So, of course, first is understanding these concepts like data structures that are very commonly asked. Once you understand them, look up questions on LeetCode that use these data structures, and then you could start to understand, you can start to get a gist on how these different data structures are applied and for what questions that you end up getting in the future in interview can these data structures apply to. And once you get to that point, you kind of go over and study the different runtimes. And when you solve your solution using a said data structure, you can understand how to solve it in a time efficient manner. So that's the perfect steps for success in an interview and just being a programmer overall. So now algorithms is the second part, right? So yeah, know how to create boilerplate code for the following topics. Now, graph traversals are very common, and shortest paths like the Bellman-Ford, I've seen a few interviews where they ask that, and dynamic programming isn't the most commonly, well, yeah, most of the time questions aren't usually going to be related to dynamic programming, but it's still, if you want to be 100% prepared, you're going to want to have to understand dynamic programming and different questions that use it. But for majority of the time, you're not going to, of course, it depends on the position. For internships, it's a little rare. They actually use dynamic programming for Robinhood questions for their internship roles. It's very, very tough, I've heard. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you can understand dynamic programming very well, then, you'll be pretty well off if you ever get it. So it wouldn't take you by surprise and extremely stress you out when you're in that time limit to finish. So, and then we got greedy, of course, heaps and when to use a min and max heap. Those are very common as well. So mixing these with data structures is essential. This is going to be the basis of your studying. So these algorithms right here in the previous slide with the data structures are the most commonly asked with data structures and algorithms. And it's not only going to help you in an interview, but help you long term when you get your position. So yeah, these are absolutely essential. And then, of course, know the runtimes of these templates, as it gives you a good starting point of the runtime of your final algorithm. And just different examples like that are detecting an infinite loop in a linked list, or just knowing post order, pre-order, or in order tree traversals. So those are very helpful. Traversals are very common, and designing a function to find the nth Fibonacci number. So yeah, and of course we're gonna throw this recording on the Discord, so you guys, if you don't remember all these algorithms or data structures, you'll be able to look back over it, so you can refer to this when you're prepping for your interviews. So yeah, and then for coding, and this kind of relates back to what I was saying earlier, that they're not, well, nowadays with COVID it's different, but most of the times, either with the live coding rounds or in person, they won't really use an IDE sometimes, or the command line. They'll just want pseudocode, right? Just to show not only that the different syntax for it, but that you actually understand the problem, and that if you are given a problem similar to that in real life, you'd know how to approach it in an efficient manner. So, but of course there's exceptions, like all the companies that we were just talking about, right? So Amazon, JP Morgan, Google, etc., they all use the third-party websites where you're going to want to know the syntax for the language you're using, or clearly it just won't compile and it just wouldn't be good. So then yeah, better be safe than sorry. You want to just make sure your code is compile ready, and that the computer can compile your source code. So it's definitely an extra step when preparing, but it's very necessary. So, and yeah, legible, explain your thought process. We went over that.
Could
Don't
you
be
repeat
afraid.
that?
Huh?
Could you repeat what you just said?
About which one exactly?
Legible thing.
Yeah, so you're gonna want to make your code legible, right?
Okay.
So it needs to be clean. And if we can all remember, just if anybody here has taken programming 1 and 2, I'm sure you started off with not fully understanding the concept of just tabs and spaces and just making sure it's clean and efficient code, because not only in these interviews will, if you get a solution that works, you answer the problem correctly, it's in a time efficient manner, but if it's all over the place, if it's not if it's not able to be read properly, sometimes comments are needed, then that's a huge negative on your behalf, because like I said before, you're not just going to write pieces of code in real life in the workforce, right? And just toss it away, or just it's going to be in the system forever. Programs tend to not be finished. It's not like it's always kind of an indefinite process. So it needs to be able to be understood by other engineers if they have to go into that program to make adjustments, or just different edits for, let's say if they have to add just if they, if a company has to start working with a new database, or different aspects like that, they're going to want to go in and make some changes. And if they go into a piece of code that you created and it's unrecognizable, right? And they, just setting up just the simple things like when you're setting up different variable names and whatnot, and if they don't come across as transparent as you possibly can, then it's going to prove difficult for other team members and anybody else working at the company. So remember, the engineers can observe and they see all these things, right? Down from from the time complexity to see how well you can communicate your thought process during the situation, if you're able to solve it in a timely manner, right? And if you have clean code that can not only be recognized by them, but by anybody else. So those steps are huge, and you have to remember those throughout the interview and when you enter the workforce. So, and yeah, so explain each step when solving it. This is a given. And yeah, design the solution before you start coding, just to make sure you don't mess up towards the middle or end. Most people tend to just gun it and just go for it and start typing as soon as the test starts. This proves to be a massive flaw majority of the time. You want to kind of relax, look at the problem, kind of analyze it in your head, and think of the best approaches. If there's a recruiter or an engineer in front of you, you're going to want to say these thought processes out loud. But if you're by yourself, you're still going to want to go through it in your head to make sure you approach it with the best possible way before just starting off in general. And remember, when you're doing that, just remember to breathe, right? Because it's nervous for everybody, but as long as you hold your composure, remember all these steps, it builds your confidence. And when you do feel confident about these, you tend to tackle way more than when you're nervous. So the mental aspect does come into play. Of course, preparing for all the steps we just went over is a majority of the preparation, but being nervous during these can definitely be detrimental in the process. So just try to relax. And yeah, so, and databases. So this one isn't the most frequently asked by a long shot, but every single company uses a database and SQL. Okay. And if you do get any type of question, it's most likely not going to be a live question, like the HackerRank based questions. They're not just gonna have you write out different SQL commands on a database, but you know, if they do ask you questions regarding database queries or just specific commands, then you're not gonna want to mess that up because that's something that everybody should know going into the field. And it's not as rigorous as you would think. So, you know, just understanding basic knowledge of just non-relational databases is their advantages, disadvantages, different primary and foreign keys within a relation. You can go as far as understanding the entity relation diagram, how to map an entity relation diagram. That more so goes into database design, which might not be necessary, but it can show that you understand a massive spectrum of database in general, right? But majority of the time, you want to be able to research just different SQL queries, like just either creating the table, just like insert, create, update, delete, right? Or if you need to alter the table, like alter, add, alter, drop. But yeah, definitely these questions are very rare, but if you do get them, it'll not be good if you can't answer these in a good way, since every single majority of the time most companies have databases, and if they have databases they most likely have SQL. So yeah, it'll not only be good for you, but it'll blow back the engineer big time because they'll know that's one less step of having to train you with. So that's pretty good. And yeah, so personal questions, these tend to be on a thin line between behavioral and technical questions. They don't really fall on either side. So they'll ask you these questions and you're going to want to answer them by with an answer that kind of demonstrates your technological skills and behavioral traits at the same time. Now, these questions are frequently asked, so yeah, so that's a big one. What are your favorite tech products and why? Most of the time it'll be tech products from the product you're applying to. So let's say JP Morgan, for instance, they love to ask if you know of any products they have, and if you do use the products they offer. And I've known some people that have gotten across all stages, behavioral, technical, got through the coding stuff, and I think code for good as well. And they were on the last step, which was supposed to be just, you know, a few steps from the finish line. And they asked them a question about, do you know any products that JP Morgan offers? And when do you use them? Why do you use them? And, you know, they just answered with, Yeah, I don't use, JP Morgan products at all. Not that small question ended up, not getting them the job, which is crazy. You might think because they've gone through the most essential parts of the interview, but it's like little things like that can make all the difference, right? Because,
Wait, what small question they couldn't answer? Repeat that again.
what was that?
What was the small question they couldn't answer?
So they were asked if they know of any JP Morgan tech products, right? And have they used any in the
Oh,
past? Yeah. And even though they answered the coding questions before perfectly, right? They got them all right, time efficiency, clean code, everything blazed through the behavioral interview part, but they fell on that one simple question.
just say you have the online banking with them. That's it. That's a
Yeah, exactly, right? And it
lie.
just shows you, it just shows them it's like, oh, well, this guy, he didn't research us at all. He barely knows about the company. He doesn't even know the products that we offer, right? Why would we hire someone that clearly isn't passionate about the company, right? So it's like you gotta freaking prepare for everything and assume any type of question can kind of prove fatal to you getting an offer letter. It sounds pessimistic, but preparation is key to these interviews. And yeah, so, and also just remember to be as enthusiastic as possible. Um, but confidence is key in these, I've noticed. Um, if you can go through these with the mentality that you've already received an offer letter, it's hard to do if you haven't, but it'll help you in the long run. These recruiters can tell, right, if you're extremely nervous or not, or if you have like that type, if you have the attitude like, oh yeah, I'm solid, I already got an offer letter, right? Because it makes you more confident and you're able to get through these easily, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind. And you'll notice after your first offer letter, just more start coming in like right after. It's ridiculous how it works. It's like the first year you're sitting there applying to hundreds of companies, freaking out while you're in school full time and possibly working. It's a nightmare, right? And then not even getting a single one, but then you end up getting one offer letter, right? You take it, and then what do you know? Within the next 2 weeks, three other companies, contact you to give you
I
offer
want to
letters.
have that experience you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. It's really messed up because it's like once you get an offer letter, the massive just intertwined network of recruiters is wild, right? So word flies around so quick that once you get that first offer letter, people will in different companies will start noticing your value, right? And they'll want to take you on as an employee at their company. So
Wait. Could you repeat that one more time?
yeah, so when you get a lot of the times when you get a first offer letter from a company, um, it usually is provided to you by the recruiter, and all these recruiters are within a massive network. Most of them know each other. They all, yeah, like I said, they operate in this massive network. And right when they hire somebody, they kind of make that public to a lot of other recruiters. And next thing you know, you'll start to see, possibly, you'll start receiving way more offer letters just because after you receive the first one, now all these recruiters are like, oh, he's actually valuable, right? And they know that because the recruiter that gave you the original offer letter kind of publicized it to everybody else, right? It's super frequent. Like it happens all the time. And then this isn't boasting or anything, but when I got my first one, I took it immediately, and that was after like, I don't know, like 6, 7 months of just pure suffering, just application after application, just test and trial, just error. It was horrible. And then what do you know, like 2 weeks later, I think two random companies messaged me on, it was either LinkedIn or Handshake, that I didn't even apply to, right? And we're just saying, "Oh, we know you, blah blah, from here," and it was it was insinuating they wanted to give an offer, right? And after so many messages from these people, you can start to tell which ones that you kind of have roped in, and it all comes back to, after that first offer letter, life is so much easier, right? So you guys just, if you haven't yet, just get past that first hurdle, and your name all of a sudden gets out there. Your stress definitely eases, but
How do we
yeah.
how do we even get on offer lists?
Hmm.
How do we get on offer lists?
Offer list? Oh, no, I said offer letter.
Oh, offer
But
letters. How do we get on offer letters?
you get an offer letter by getting through the application process successfully, right? So it'll start off by you submitting your resume to a job post online. They look through your resume, see that they're interested, they think you have potential, so they send you another link. It could be a behavioral interview, it could be a technical interview, it could be a mix of both. Could be several stages, like 2 technical interviews, 1 behavioral. Nonetheless, that's the process that the company will go with. And once you get through all of them successfully, that's when they'll give you a call and be like, "Hey, so you passed the, let's say for this instance, you passed the 3 coding questions perfect and successfully. We want to give you an offer letter for an internship for the summer," right? So yeah, no, just an offer letter is just basically getting a job. Fancier way to say getting a job, but yeah. Um, yeah, and then really quick, just different examples, right? So um, Facebook has a behavioral and technical round within one single phone call. Okay. Or no, sorry, Zoom call. And it'll start off with one engineer and one just HR person. And the HR person will just go down a list of behavioral questions, and everything will seem fine. It's going by smoothly. And then once she's done, the engineer will start asking you questions, and he'll start off with around 10 object-oriented programming questions, where it'll just be, like I said before, questions that will demonstrate your basic understanding of just programming in general. For this instance, object-oriented programming. And then following that will be the physical coding, which is they'll give you like 2 to 3 questions on kind of like a Google Docs based kind of website, where they're gonna look over it in real time, right? And all of that is literally within one meeting. So it's very intimidating, but it's Facebook, and it's still not crazy difficult. It's very manageable by any of you. So, and then of course, Robinhood, this one's through HackerRank. Yeah, they tend to have some dynamic programming based questions sometimes, which can prove to be a little difficult, depending on how you make of it. But yeah, those usually are medium to hard level leak code questions. They were during COVID. I'm not too I'm not very sure how they were before COVID, but yeah. And then JP Morgan, first stage, you're going to do that small plyometric stuff where they go over just several interactive games that test your behavioral skills. You get through that, you go on to the second round. They'll send you an email as soon as you finish the plyometrics, as soon as you finish, and it's automated by the computer, right? This isn't, the result won't be given by a person, right? So if you do good on plyometrics, that behavioral, the list of games, the computer will automatically send you a link for a technical interview, and it'll usually give you maybe like 3 days, 3 to 4 days to do it, right? You obviously won't be able to see the answers before them, but you'll have a small time frame to take them, and they'll consist of 3 coding problems. They're usually held through CodeView and CodeView or HireView, well, one of the two. And yeah, once you get past that, then you're on to the third round, which is either you're invited to Code for Good, which is a good sign if you are, or you're automatically just rushed to the final stage, which would just be just a small brush up on technical and behavioral skills together. Very light questions. But yeah, either outcome is very good if you can get to the third round. It's this second round will probably be the hardest. And yeah, Amazon first round debugging, not too bad. Once you've finished the debugging questions, which is around like 10 questions, again, automated system. You finish that, the computer will send you a link to a second coding round, which will be, it'll just be algorithmic based questions like we went over a few slides ago. Boom, you pass that. You get a link by the computer for a third stage, which is the behavioral step. Now, this step is obviously done either in person or live through Zoom, because right now with COVID. And yeah, if you get to the third round, if you can finalize pretty much on that, on just answering basic behavioral questions, then you pretty much got the job at that point.
Hey Joseph, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
This UP Advance is held out throughout the whole semester, like for multiple semesters, like from spring, summer, and fall, or just spring and fall? Because like this is
UPE, we not for summer, but for fall and spring. Yeah, there's still activity during the summer, but our events are mainly during fall and spring. Yeah.
no, but like this is very interesting. I never knew this. This is interesting. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no, I didn't know about it a year ago, right? And it's crazy. Like the amount of like opportunities you get from this is kind of wild. Like, because they work with still a ton of alumni that were at the university or within UPE. They were already, or yeah, that graduated or whatnot. They still mess around and help out with UPE, right? And they're working at massive companies like Google, Facebook, L3 Harris, Goldman Sachs, and they interact and give people in UPE advice, do workshops with them. We work with all these companies that we just mentioned, like Advance is doing a workshop with Google late this month. That'll be announced in probably a week or so. And yeah, and we're partnering up with Facebook next or in the fall. Possibly UP Code will most likely do a workshop with Facebook in early April, but that just goes to show you that just being a part of this organization, you have way more chances to get in with these companies because you can actually attend these workshops and get to know these different recruiters. And get their personal email, send them your resume, you know. It's just, it gives you more of an edge than the average person. Of course, workshops like these don't hurt as well. You know, just give you a little bit of advice on how to not only study harder, but smarter. So, and yeah, so that wraps it up. We're gonna throw the entire recording on Discord. If you guys want to view it again, just kind of go through it. Use it in your records while you're going through LeetCode or HackerRank to kind of study it and apply it to different questions. And yeah, that's pretty much it, unless I'm missing anything.
I have a quick question first.
Yeah.
So I heard that people can use offers from companies as leverage for other companies.
Yeah, that's actually very big. Yeah. Okay, so that's not with internships, that's with full-time roles. They are, if you get an internship, because those salaries tend to be fixed. But when you get your first offer letter from a full-time position, and let's say a second one give you an offer letter that is, let's say it's like 10 grand less, you can negotiate the price with them majority of the time. You can negotiate the price with them and be like, hey, I really want to work with you guys, but XYZ is offering this set amount of money. You know, you guys are just a little bit under that. If you can match that or even better, more, then I'll come work with you. And that, you know, that just shows your worth is like outstanding to them. And yeah, it works very well if you just have one offer letter, not so much. If you have a few, it's crazy how well you can literally end up adjusting your salary significantly compared to somebody else who has the exact same position, all based on how you negotiated the price or the salary. So yeah.
I have a question about internships.
Yeah, go for it.
A lot of internships, a lot of the time require, not a lot of them, but some of them I do, like knowledge of this or experience with this. And I'm just like, it's supposed to be an internship, which it just confuses me. Especially a lot of them, since a lot of them are for sophomore oriented, which is crazy to me because a lot of people don't really know exactly what they're asking for.
Well, here's the thing, it's that obviously these internships, you know, they're not looking for people that have work experience already, right? Because obviously it's an internship and, you know, that's the first step into getting in the workforce. They're not just gonna be like, oh, well, experience in the workforce is required. You know, that's never gonna happen. But you need to demonstrate that you actually have a basis and understanding of just fundamental programming knowledge, right? Or else anybody could join and, you know, take the position. So it's just the information you're learning in your classes and just group projects is sufficient enough, right? And if you utilize yeah, just different websites like LeetCode and just understand how to answer basic, well, no, I wouldn't say basic, but just regular LeetCode questions, which is very similar to questions that we've all gotten through several programming questions. But yeah, you know, it's nothing that you can't learn on your own or through the courses that you've been provided. So it might seem a little infuriating at first, just by looking at it and seeing some of the requirements and thinking like, oh, what are they thinking? I'm a sophomore or I'm a freshman or junior in college. Are they assuming I'm very skilled am I very skilled with these technologies? Sometimes it could be deceiving on the job post, right? Because in the interviews, they'll, like I said, just basic fundamental knowledge of programming in general, right? So you don't need to demonstrate that you're just massively skilled and skilled programmer. So yeah, so it's not as intimidating as you would think. Of course, when you begin looking at these job posts and applying and looking through the requirements, it can be very intimidating, but once you start viewing different workshops like these, getting through the stages, doing a few technical interviews, talking with some people that have been through it, you'll start to understand just different factors of these interviews that are, it is a lot of repetition, right? So, yeah, so it's not as intimidating as you might think. So don't look at the requirements for an internship specifically and just think the worst. Think that you have to be complete expert level at these said technologies. Just, demonstrate that you have a clear understanding of them. But yeah, does that
All
answer
right.
your question?
Yes.
All right, cool. Did anybody else have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah,
The meeting's
go
over,
for
right?
it.
For so every week and like in advance, like there's always some leak code session that we gotta like participate to get like better to prepare for these
Yeah. No, we just added
technical
that.
code questions and interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely, man. So we just
Look,
added
I
that.
usually pass the behavioral. Like the code one be like messing me
Yeah.
up. So
Yeah, right. So once you figure out the behavioral, pass it a few times, you're good for like ever, right? It's super repetitive. So
you gotta be super positive. Show them like, oh, what do you have an issue? You
Yeah.
solved it. Like
yeah, exactly. You got it. It's simple. I mean, maybe for some people it might not be as simple, but the coding is the hardest part when compared to like behavioral or just resume help and stuff. But yeah, no, we help out with that as well. Um, we do the weekly lead code sessions where we go over each week. It's a new topic, and these topics tend to be based on literally everything that we just went over under the data structures and algorithm slides, like linked lists, graph traversals, even dynamic programming is going to be our last session. So yeah, no, we cover everything throughout the semester on a weekly basis. So it's sick. It's very cool. And then we have Jose Asiano, one of our committee members, kind of facilitate them. He's very skilled at kind of teaching these concepts in a very clear manner. It's very easy to understand with Jose. So yeah, no, it's super cool. We also post the recordings on Discord, but yeah, you can also join and interact with him and just others to ask different questions. But yeah, no, it's super cool. It's every week around 6 o'clock. So, but yeah, no, that's it for today, guys. Unless anybody has any questions for me.
No,
This is
we don't have to. I don't have any questions.
all right. Perfect. This is our website, email, if you guys want to contact us for any reason. Of course, social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're on all of them. Definitely connect with us on LinkedIn. you're going to see different posts that you can interact with, like just being a part of the UPE organization as itself is definitely prestigious, and it's extremely beneficial to your growth and just getting into the workforce when you compare it to the average person, right? So just all these resources that you can utilize is very it's very amazing. But yeah, no, that's it for today, guys. We're gonna leave the breakout rooms.